Mom edits me out of all her wedding photos from her second marriage after getting me to pay for it and acting friendly with me throughout, claiming that it was an event of new beginnings after all, and gave me an insincere apology after I got mad. But now she's going around telling everyone how I'm still stuck in the past because I changed the locks on the house. I've always had a complicated relationship with my mom. I'm 31 now, and she's 58. But things between us have never been easy. When I was 13, my parents got divorced, and it was ugly. My dad caught my mom cheating with a coworker, and everything pretty much fell apart after that. There was a lot of fighting, especially over money and custody. In the end, I decided to live primarily with my dad, which definitely put a strain on my relationship with mom. My dad was the definition of hardworking. He built a successful construction business from nothing and always made sure I had everything I needed. He supported me through college, always had my back, and was just an all-around solid guy. My mom, on the other hand, was all over the place. She went from job to job, relationship to relationship, and was never really consistent in my life. She'd disappear for months and then suddenly show up acting like we were super close. It was exhausting, but I tried to keep some kind of relationship with her because, at the end of the day, she's my mom. 2 years ago, my dad passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. Losing him was devastating. He was my rock. And suddenly, he was just gone. When his will was read, it was clear that he had left everything to me: his house, which was fully paid off, and his business, which I've been running with the help of his longtime employees. My younger half-brother, who's 24 now and from my dad's short second marriage, got a small cash inheritance. My mom wasn't mentioned at all, which wasn't surprising given how their marriage ended. After my dad died, my mom suddenly started showing up in my life a lot more. She called me regularly, invited me out to lunch, and seemed really interested in reconnecting. At the time, I was grieving and honestly just appreciated having some family around. She told me she had regrets about the past, about how things went down with my dad, and that she wanted to make things right with me. And I believed her. About 6 months ago, she announced that she was engaged to Robert, her boyfriend of 2 years. I'd met Robert a few times, and he seemed like a decent guy, quiet, polite, nothing bad to say about him. My mom was over the moon, diving headfirst into wedding planning. She kept saying she wanted something small but elegant. Nothing over the top. Then the hints about money started. She'd casually mention how expensive weddings were, how she wished she could afford a nicer venue, a better dress, or professional photography. At first, I brushed it off, but after hearing it enough times, I finally offered to help. I was doing okay financially, running my dad's business, and I figured this was a way to support our improving relationship. So, I covered the venue, photography, and her dress, which ended up costing me a little over $15,000. During the whole wedding planning process, she seemed really grateful. She asked for my opinion on decorations, music, even her dress, which made me feel like we were finally building the kind of mother-daughter bond I'd always wanted. She even asked me to be her bridesmaid, and honestly, that meant a lot. For the first time in years, I thought maybe things were finally changing between us, that maybe we could have a real relationship again. The wedding day finally arrived, and everything went off without a hitch. The ceremony was beautiful, the decorations were perfect, and the reception was lively. Everyone seemed to have a great time, and I was genuinely happy for my mom. I even gave a heartfelt toast, wishing her and Robert a lifetime of happiness. When she hugged me afterward and told me how much it meant to her that I was there, I felt good about everything. Sure, I had spent a significant chunk of money on the wedding, but at least Mom seemed genuinely happy. That made it worth it. At least, that's what I thought at the time. About 2 weeks after the wedding, Mom called me up, sounding excited. She told me the photographer had finished editing the wedding pictures and had sent over the final versions. She forwarded me the link to the online gallery, and I couldn't wait to see them. I had paid extra to hire one of the best photographers in the area, and I was eager to see how beautifully the pictures had turned out. But the moment I opened the link, my heart dropped. I scrolled through photo after photo, searching for myself. But I wasn't there. Every single picture where I had been present had been either cropped, altered, or edited to remove me. Even in large group photos, I had been carefully erased. Candid moments where I was caught in the background had either been replaced with other guests or adjusted so that I wasn't visible. The only pictures that still had me in them were a couple from the ceremony itself. And even in those, I was awkwardly pushed to the very edge of the frame, as if I was an afterthought. I sat there in disbelief, my stomach twisting. I had poured my time, effort, and a lot of money into making this wedding happen. I had thought Mom and I were finally repairing our relationship, that this was a fresh start for us. And yet, when it came time to capture these memories, she had gone out of her way to erase me as if I hadn't been there at all. Shaking, I picked up my phone and called her immediately. I needed to hear her explanation. Maybe there had been a mistake, miscommunication with the photographer, maybe there was some kind of reasonable explanation. But when Mom answered, her response left me speechless. She calmly explained that the wedding was about new beginnings, and she wanted the photos to reflect that. According to her, since I was a product of her past marriage, the one that had ended in betrayal and divorce, it didn't feel right to have me featured in the documentation of her fresh start with Robert. She told me she didn't want to be reminded of her old life, and since I was connected to that, she had decided it was best to minimize my presence in the wedding album. I was stunned. I reminded her that I had paid for the photographer along with the venue and her dress. I had done everything I could to support her on this day, and she had erased me like I didn't even exist. Her response, "Oh, I thought that was a gift without strings attached. I didn't realize you expected to be featured in my wedding photos just because you contributed financially." I could feel my blood boiling. This wasn't about money. It was about respect. I had supported her, been there for her, and in return, she had literally removed me from the memories of her wedding. The conversation quickly escalated into an argument. I tried to explain how deeply hurtful this was, but she kept brushing me off, acting like I was being dramatic and selfish. She insisted that this was her wedding, her memories, and her decision to make. Eventually, she gave what felt like the most insincere apology ever. "I'm sorry you feel hurt, but this was my day. I did what I thought was best for me." I hung up the phone, feeling more betrayed than ever. But it didn't stop there. A few days later, I started hearing from mutual family friends that Mom was telling people I was stuck in the past and unable to accept her happiness. She painted herself as the victim, claiming that I was overreacting and trying to make her wedding all about me. Conveniently, she left out the part where I had covered a huge portion of the costs and had been erased from the photos like I never existed. As if all of that wasn't bad enough, Mom called me again shortly after, and this time she had a new request, one that truly pushed me over the edge. When my dad passed, I had inherited his house. At the time, while I was still grieving, I had made an offhand comment to Mom about how I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, and that maybe, just maybe, I would consider letting her move in since I already had my own condo closer to my work. That was said during a time of deep emotion without much thought, and it was definitely not a firm offer. But now, after everything that had happened, Mom was acting like it was a done deal. She told me that she and Robert were looking to downsize from his place and that Dad's house would be perfect for them, not just for them, but for Robert's 2 teenage kids from his previous marriage, who split time between their parents. The audacity of that request was beyond anything I could have imagined. She had cheated on my dad, divorced him, barely been in my life, erased me from her wedding photos, and then spread lies about me to family and friends. And now she thought she could just move into the house my dad had left to me with her new husband and his kids. I took a deep breath and told her flat out, no. I had changed my mind. The house was mine, left to me by my father, and after everything that had happened, I wasn't comfortable with her living there, especially not with Robert and his children. She was shocked. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying that I was being unreasonable and that she was my mother and that families help each other. But I had finally reached my limit. For years, I had bent over backward trying to maintain some kind of relationship with her, trying to believe she could change. But this was too much. I stood my ground. And for the first time in a long time, I put myself first. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. Mom exploded. She accused me of being vindictive, saying I was using the house to punish her for what she did with the wedding photos. She insisted that I had promised her the house, which I absolutely hadn't, and claimed that she had already told Robert and his kids they would be moving in. She was furious that I was going back on my word and called me selfish, just like my father. Then, in a moment of pure manipulation, she warned me that I would regret this decision. I refused to back down. I told her again that the house was mine, legally left to me by Dad, and I wasn't comfortable with her living there. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me in anger. The next day, my phone blew up with texts from her. She bounced between guilt-tripping and outright manipulation. One moment it was, "I'm your mother. How could you do this to me?" Then in the next breath, she was saying, "Your father would be so disappointed in how you're treating me." It was a never-ending cycle of trying to make me feel like the bad guy. I didn't respond to any of her messages. Instead, I decided to take action. I changed all the locks on Dad's house. Even though I wasn't living there full-time, I used it for storage and sometimes stayed overnight when I needed to be closer to certain job sites. Given how Mom was acting, something in my gut told me she might try to force her way in. Just to be safe, I also installed a security camera system. Sure enough, my instincts were right. 2 days later, I got an alert from the security system. When I checked the footage, there she was, Mom and Robert standing on the porch, trying to unlock the front door with an old key. Dad had never asked for his key back after the divorce, and apparently Mom still had it. The camera caught the exact moment she realized the key wasn't working. The shock on her face was undeniable, quickly replaced by visible frustration. She and Robert then had what looked like a heated discussion before eventually giving up and leaving. Mom called me immediately afterward, absolutely furious. She accused me of being cruel, of locking her out of her own house. I calmly reminded her that it wasn't her house, it was mine. She had no claim to it, no right to just assume she could move in, and if she was so focused on new beginnings, she could start fresh somewhere else. If she could erase me from her wedding photos so that she wouldn't have reminders of the past, then she had no business trying to move into a house filled with memories of my father, the very man she betrayed and abandoned years ago. That's when the real family drama kicked off. Mom went on a full-scale campaign to paint me as the villain. She called every relative and family friend, telling them I was heartless for denying her a place to live. Of course, she conveniently left out the part about editing me out of the wedding photos, the very wedding I had helped pay for. She also left out the fact that she and my father hadn't spoken in nearly 2 decades before his death. Instead, she made it sound like I was cruelly tossing my own mother out on the street for no reason. Some relatives immediately took her side, saying I was being cold and ungrateful. They insisted that family is family, and if I had a house that I wasn't living in full-time, I should honor my so-called promise and let her have it. Others, however, thought I was completely justified given how she had treated me. They pointed out that Mom only started acting like she wanted a real relationship with me after Dad died, coincidentally, right when I inherited his house and business. The whole thing has caused a huge rift in the family, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't getting to me. I keep questioning myself. Was I wrong to change the locks? Was I being petty for not letting her move in, considering everything that happened with the wedding photos? Should I have just let her have the house to keep the peace? I spent years trying to repair my relationship with Mom, hoping that things would finally get better between us. But after everything she's done, using me for money, erasing me from her wedding, and now acting entitled to the house my dad left me, it really feels like she's been taking advantage of me all along. Still, part of me wonders, am I the bad guy here? Update 1. First of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who took the time to read my story, offer support, and give advice. I never expected this post to get so much attention, and I honestly didn't realize how much I needed to hear from people who understand and validate what I'm going through. It's been overwhelming in the best way, and I truly appreciate it. After reading through the many comments and suggestions, I decided to take the next step and consult with an attorney about the house situation. I wanted to be completely sure of my rights and understand if there was anything I needed to do to protect myself legally. The lawyer confirmed what a lot of you had already pointed out: the house is 100% mine, legally left to me in my father's will, and I have every right to decide who lives there. She also strongly advised me to start documenting all interactions with my mother from now on, just in case things escalate further. Given everything that's happened, I think that was very good advice. Speaking of escalation, things took a turn yesterday. Mom showed up at my workplace right in the middle of the workday, completely unannounced. I work at the office of my dad's construction company, the business he built from the ground up and left to me. She walked in like she owned the place and immediately started making a scene in front of my employees and even some clients. She was loud, angry, and demanding, insisting that I honor my word and give her the house like I had promised. She actually accused me of trying to sabotage her new marriage by refusing to let them move in, saying I was leaving them homeless, which is completely ridiculous. Robert owns a perfectly nice house, and there is absolutely no reason they can't live there. This isn't about needing a place to stay. This is about her wanting to take something that was left to me and feeling entitled to it. I stayed calm and asked her to leave, but she refused. She just kept going, getting louder and drawing more attention. It was embarrassing, frustrating, and honestly, just so disappointing. Eventually, my office manager, who has known me since I was a kid and was close to my dad, stepped in. She very firmly told my mother that if she didn't leave immediately, we would have no choice but to call the police. That finally did the trick. Mom stormed out, furious, but at least she left without further incident. Later that evening, I got an email from her. The subject line just said the photos. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity got the best of me. Inside was a link to all the original, unedited wedding photos, the versions before I had been cut out. At first, I felt a little relieved, like maybe this was some kind of olive branch. But then I read the message she attached, which said, "Here are the photos you paid for. I hope now you can see reason about the house." No apology, no acknowledgement of how hurtful it was to erase me from the wedding pictures in the first place. Just another manipulative move to try to get what she wants. It didn't feel like an attempt to make things right. It felt like a calculated move to guilt me into giving her the house. Meanwhile, she's still going around telling family members that I had promised her the house and that I'm being cruel by changing my mind. She's conveniently leaving out all the important details, like the fact that she only started reconnecting with me after Dad passed and left me his assets, or that she erased me from her wedding photos after I paid for them. It's frustrating to hear how one-sided her version of events is, but thankfully not everyone is buying into it. My aunt, Mom's own sister, called me recently to try and mediate the situation. I was expecting another guilt trip, but instead she just asked to hear my side of the story. So, I told her everything. I explained the wedding photo situation, how Mom had suddenly become present in my life again right after Dad passed, and how she acted entitled to a house that wasn't hers. By the end of our conversation, my aunt was stunned. She admitted that Mom hadn't told her any of that and said she understood why I was standing my ground. And that's exactly what I'm doing, standing firm on my decision. But I won't lie, this whole situation has been incredibly stressful, and it's taking a toll on me. So, I've started therapy to help process everything. My therapist pointed out something that really hit home: this isn't just about the house. This is about a lifelong pattern of me struggling to set boundaries with my mother. She's been walking all over me for years, and this is my opportunity to finally stand up for myself. It's not easy, but I know it's necessary. For now, I'm keeping my contact with Mom to a minimum. I don't think cutting her off entirely is the right move at this moment, but I'm definitely not engaging with her drama anymore. My priority is running Dad's business, focusing on my own well-being, and deciding what to do with Dad's house long-term. I haven't made a final decision yet, but I'm considering a few options, whether to sell it, rent it out, or maybe even move into it myself one day. No matter what happens, one thing is for sure: I'm not letting my mom bully me into giving up what my father left me. Not anymore. Update 2. Things have escalated in ways I could never have imagined. Yesterday, I received a formal letter from an attorney representing my mother. The letter claimed that she had an equity interest in my dad's house because she and my father had purchased it together during their marriage. This was despite the fact that their divorce settlement in Dad's will clearly stated that the house was his alone. It felt like a blatant attempt to pressure me into giving up the house. As soon as I read the letter, I forwarded it to my attorney. She reviewed it and reassured me that my mother had absolutely no legal claim to the house. My father had fully owned it after the divorce, continued paying the mortgage by himself for years, and ultimately left it to me in his will. My name is the only one on the deed, and legally there's no argument she can make that would hold up in court. My attorney called it nothing more than an intimidation tactic and told me not to worry, but it was still unsettling. What made things even worse was that later that same day, my mother's husband, Robert, showed up at my dad's house again. This time, he wasn't alone. He had a truck with him and some empty boxes in the back. My security cameras caught him walking around the property, looking through the windows, even trying the back door. When he realized he couldn't get in, he pulled out his phone, made a call, which I can only assume was to my mother, and then stared directly into the security camera before leaving. The whole thing felt incredibly unnerving, like he was trying to send a message. I called my attorney again to update her, and she advised me to consider filing for a restraining order. I'm not sure I want to take that step just yet, but I did report the incident to the police so that there's an official record of it. I also went ahead and upgraded the security system on the house. Now, in addition to the cameras, I have motion sensors and additional surveillance set up. I refuse to take any chances with this situation. Meanwhile, the family is completely split over all of this. My mom's side is largely taking her side, which doesn't surprise me, though a few relatives have privately reached out to say they think she's in the wrong but don't want to say so publicly. On the other hand, my dad's siblings and extended family are 100% backing me up. They know what my mother is like, and they've been incredibly supportive through this whole ordeal. One of the most surprising things to come out of all this was a phone call from my half-brother, dad's son from his second marriage. We've never been particularly close, but he reached out to let me know that he fully supports me. Then he dropped a bombshell. I found out that when Dad passed away, my mother had actually tried to contest his will. She attempted to claim part of Dad's business and assets, supposedly on my half-brother's behalf, even though he wanted nothing to do with it. He had refused to be involved, which I had never known until now. Learning this made everything click into place. It became painfully clear that my mother's sudden desire to reconnect with me after Dad's death had never been about repairing our relationship. It was about money all along. I'm exhausted by all of this. It feels like a never-ending battle, and I hate that it's come to this. But I'm also more determined than ever not to let her manipulate or intimidate me anymore. The house is mine, legally and rightfully, and I refuse to be bullied into giving it up. If she and Robert continue pushing, I'll do whatever I need to do to protect myself and my home. Update 3. I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything that happened last night. Even as I sit here writing this, it all feels so surreal, like something out of a bad movie. I never imagined things would escalate to this level, but here we are. Last night around 8 p.m., I got a frantic call from one of the neighbors who lives near my dad's house. She sounded panicked as she told me that there were multiple police cars and a fire truck parked outside. My heart immediately started pounding. I grabbed my phone and tried to check the security cameras, but every single feed was offline. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. Without a second thought, I jumped in my car and drove straight there as fast as I could. When I arrived, my stomach dropped. There were flashing lights everywhere, police officers talking to neighbors, firefighters walking around assessing the damage. One look at the house and I could see the shattered back window. I pushed my way through the chaos, desperate to find out what had happened. A police officer approached me, asking if I was the homeowner. When I confirmed that I was, he pulled me aside to explain the situation. Someone had broken into the house and started a fire in the kitchen. Thankfully, the smoke detectors went off almost immediately, and one of the neighbors had called 911. The fire department had arrived quickly and was able to contain the flames before they spread beyond the kitchen. But there was still significant damage, charred walls, smoke damage, and ruined appliances. If the fire had gone unnoticed for just a little longer, the entire house could have been lost. As I was trying to process everything, the officer told me they had a lead on who might have done it. One of my neighbors had security cameras pointed toward the street, and their footage showed a very familiar car speeding away right after the fire started. It was Robert's car, my mother's husband, the man who had been pushing so hard for them to move into the house. I was still in shock, trying to make sense of it all, when my phone rang. I looked down and saw Robert's name on the screen. I hesitated for a second before answering, and what I heard next completely floored me. Robert immediately launched into what sounded like a nervous, rambling confession. He admitted that he had been the one to break in. He claimed that he had acted out of frustration and anger after my mother had spent the entire day crying over losing her house. According to him, he only meant to cause a little damage, to make me feel guilty, his exact words. But things got out of hand. He insisted that he hadn't meant for the fire to spread and that he never wanted to destroy the house, just send a message. He sounded frantic and remorseful, but I wasn't buying any of it. By the time I got off the phone, the police had already received word that Robert had turned himself in. He had walked into the station and admitted everything. And now he was facing charges for breaking and entering, arson, and destruction of property. Not even 10 minutes later, my mother was calling me, sobbing and begging me not to press charges. She said Robert had just made a mistake, that he was a good man who had acted out in the heat of the moment, and that throwing him in jail would ruin their new life together. She even had the audacity to suggest that if I hadn't taken the house away from her, none of this would have happened. I was stunned. This wasn't just denial. It was full-blown delusion. For the first time throughout this entire ordeal, I felt absolutely no guilt in my decision. I calmly told her that Robert had crossed a line that could never be undone and that I would be cooperating fully with the police. Her pleas turned to anger as she accused me of being heartless and vengeful. I didn't engage. I just hung up. This morning, I met with my attorney again. She agreed that it was time to take stronger legal action. So, we're in the process of filing for a restraining order against both Robert and my mother. On top of that, she's helping me work with the insurance company to start the process of repairing the house. The most surprising part of all this has been the reaction from my family. Everyone, every single relative, even the ones who were originally on my mom's side, have now completely distanced themselves from her. My aunt, my mom's own sister, came to see me in person, crying and apologizing for ever believing my mother's version of events. She told me she had no idea things would go this far and that she was absolutely disgusted by what Robert had done. She even offered to testify on my behalf if it came to that. Even more shocking, Robert's ex-wife reached out to me. She told me she wasn't the least bit surprised by his actions. Apparently, he has a history of acting impulsively and destructively when things don't go his way. She warned me to be careful, saying that he's capable of worse. She also said she'd be willing to provide a statement if necessary. At this point, I'm emotionally exhausted. I feel like I've been put through the ringer, but strangely, I also feel a sense of clarity. There's no more doubt in my mind. My mother never cared about rebuilding our relationship. She cared about what she could gain from me. The moment she realized I wasn't going to hand over my inheritance, she let Robert escalate things to this dangerous level. And then she defended him when he got caught. That's not love. That's manipulation, plain and simple. Once the house is repaired, I've made my decision, I'm selling it. As much as I love the memories I have of my dad in that house, it's now tainted by everything that's happened. I know my dad wouldn't want me to hold on to something that's become a source of so much stress and pain. I think he'd just want me to move on and be happy. As for my mother, I'm done. Completely done. I have no intention of speaking to her again. She allowed her husband to commit a crime against me, then tried to guilt me into letting him off the hook. That's unforgivable. This whole experience has been an absolute nightmare. But in a way, I feel like it's been necessary. It's forced me to see the truth about my mother, and it's made me realize just how strong I actually am. I'm choosing to move forward with the people who have truly supported me through this, and I'm leaving the toxicity behind. Thank you to everyone who has followed this roller coaster of a journey. Your support and advice have meant more than you know. I never thought I'd be dealing with something like this, but at least now I know I'm not alone. And more importantly, I know I'm making the right decision.